You're listening to Charting the Future, a podcast for independent pediatricians by PCC. For more information about our software and services, please visit www.pcc.com or visit us on social media.
All right, welcome back, friends, to Charting the Future from PCC. I'm Chip Hart, and I'm a week behind, but we're going to make up for it really quickly. It's quality, not quantity, is what I've been told. I am here today with Dr. Christoph Diasio, who's kind enough to call me from his beach vacation. I think you probably had too much sun. You need to come in. So,
it's
Dr.
hot in the
Diasio,
middle
how
of the
are
day.
you?
Who wants to get skin cancer anyways, right? It's much
I'm with
nicer
you.
first thing in the morning at the end of the day.
Yeah. At the beach, you know, who is the child of the derms and the pediatricians? They're the kids with like the whole hat and everything.
The sunscreen's so blindingly white, you need sunglasses to look at them, right?
Exactly. I am of the generation that, our logic is the tough ones lived, but I'm smart enough to realize it's the lucky ones lived. It's not tough.
There's some survivor bias in those stories, to be sure.
100%, totally. So, Christoph, the first question I'm going to ask you, it's the same question I've asked everyone, and I don't actually know the answer to this question. Sometimes I do, but do you remember the first time we met?
No. I feel certain it was at an AAP meeting in one of those conference rooms that all sort of blur together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been at least 20 years.
Yeah, I'll look it up while we're talking, but
yeah, my oldest
did I know
email
you before you were a client?
Yes. My oldest email from you goes back to like 2005. So
okay,
it's been a while.
I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, I don't remember when I first met you either. So
I think you and I feel like we've always been around each other's lives.
Yeah. There is some truth to that. Well, I see some stuff about NCQA Medical Home from 2009, and I know.
Oh yes, I made a lot of noise about that.
Yep. Well, you were prevalent on SOPM because you were kind of the SOPM chair for a little bit, and I was prevalent on SOPM. And you and I often have interesting and parallel takes on things. You fill in a lot of the blanks that I skip. And
well, right back at you. You came to a lot of SOPM discussions with data, and a lot of people came to the discussions with their strong opinion about their individual practice. Mm-hmm. And so it was helpful when you could say, well, I've looked at, a gazillion claims, and I can see that people do actually get paid for that code some of the time.
Yeah, I think if I could claim anything about my time on SOPM, I think I could claim to be the person who ended more discussions than anyone else in the history of SOPM. I'm seriously, the number of times it's like, da-da-da-da, and then Chip posted something and everyone just stopped talking about it, which I took personally for a long time. And then I realized, because there wasn't really a lot more to say.
That's funny.
That's all. I see it. Like, there was a time where I was like, I think this is like the 7th time in a row no one replies to me. Like, am I doing something wrong? And
or you were definitive, right? There's lots of ways to think about that.
Yes, my ego is robust enough that I don't really lose sleep about it anymore. But at the time, nonetheless. So, as anyone who knows Christoph should know, we could narrowly define any topic and get a good 2 or 3 hours out of it. Okay. Peace in the Middle East. We could talk about it for 3 hours. Well, and so what I want to ask you, because Christoph was SOPM chair for a while, all right, at a very pivotal time and an important time. You're gonna hate me for this, but you're the Buzzy Mancheri Award winner this year, which I was delighted to see.
Thank you. I'm not gonna hate you for that.
Yeah. It's very, very, very deserved. I put you and Suzanne Berman in a class of people that is sort of like, if you go to the Cooperstown, you're in the Hall of Fame. That first round of people they inducted, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and everything. Like that's who kind. You are. Well,
that's very kind.
So you and I talk pretty frequently about a broad list of things, and I just want to know this week, what is on your mind as a pediatrician? What's what's taking up your brain space as a pediatrician?
I mean, I think, the biggest thing I think is where we are sort of politically with all the anti-science, anti-vaccine, the many different ways people are coming after us. On the other hand, we're also in a time where we have incredible achievements, right? We have, an amazing RSV immunization that really, really works. And as, I describe to parents, this is on the level of like an answered prayer. So I'm not trying to, go deep cuts to prior English majors on this call, but, is it the best of times and the worst of times, right? So,
Oh, nice. Charles Dickens.
Yep. I think we're going to make this, we're going to go for your longest podcast ever. So we can say we're getting paid.
Wait, though. As I recall from that novel, someone gets beheaded. So
well, there is that.
That's got layers to that. Nice one.
That. Yeah, no, not. We're not calling for violence, but nope. There are definitely some bad ideas that should, end up on the dustbin of history. So yeah, I mean, I think the sort of the scariest thing. America's going to probably lose measles elimination status. We are working on a lot of different things. We are giving, measles vaccines early and for travel domestically. Those kind of things that we didn't really think we would be at, but we also have all these other things that are happening that are, positive and exciting. And, because I think of the stresses we've seen organized medicine and particularly organized pediatrics and the AAP and a number of state chapters sort of stand up in a way that I think a lot of people would have had a hard time imagining, 15, 20 years ago. They've really met the moment.
Yep. I think it would be interesting if the AAP's policy starts treating certain states like third world countries. And if you're traveling to Florida, you should get your measles shot. Well, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I just said it was interesting.
Yeah.
No offense to our friends in Florida.
I think a lot of it is really hyper local, and it's also how do you get there, right? Like if you're getting there in the plane, that's a totally different scenario than if you're driving in your own little hermetically sealed car to go meet the grandparents.
Christoph, you're being totally reasonable, and my suggestion was unreasonable.
Well, it is kind of what I try to bring.
Yeah, that's right.
I spend a lot of time with families now actually trying to weigh out those, okay, you're going to go on a trip. What are the things we should think about? Is it better to fly or is it to drive? I mean, we're having those conversations with folks now in a way that we didn't used to.
You know who I would love to meet are the risk management people from places like Disney and say, tell me, okay, you're not political. You are all about making sure people keep walking through the turnstiles. Like
right.
It is. This is the benefit of capitalism. Like, so tell me what? Oh my gosh! It just dawned on me. I have a very weirdly deep Disney connection. A relative who I don't know or speak to, but I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could get in touch. And it dawns on me, there's no way they would ever talk to me. So that's just a fantasy. But I want to know what.
Well,
what
the concern with Disney too is right. A lot of our Make-A-Wish kids are going there, right? So I would wish for good community immunity everywhere, but especially Disney.
Disney does not want a Make-A-Wish kid getting measles.
Disney doesn't want anybody. Let's be fair. Disney doesn't want anybody.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying,
right?
They are all about true public safety, and so
right.
This is, by the way, this is what happens. I don't think there's anyone I know who makes me have more segue thoughts than you do. Like where I'm like, oh, wait a second, what about this? Usually I'm good for 1 hour, but we're gonna have 6 or 7.
Yeah, sorry. The ADD is infectious at a certain point. I've been unable to remain untouched.
Yeah. Where do you see? This is something I've been pondering a little bit. I know that it will depend on how the transition from our present federal administration to the next one goes. And we don't know who the next one will be. So, of course, that part of it is opaque to us. It could be more anti-science. It could be equally anti-science. It could be vehemently pro-science. But I'm wondering if you feel like there's if yet we have a vision for how this will resolve. At some point, science wins. I gave a talk about this. You were actually in the room at Pediatric CEO. We've got what we're experiencing right now in the United States has been done before at a much higher level even. And in my case, I point out the Lysenko connection, the Russia and the
Sure.
millions, literally tens of millions of people who died as a result. And eventually the science wins because science doesn't care, right? That's the best
Right.
thing. And science will win.
Works
So
whether you
when that,
believe in it or not.
exactly, to quote one of our favorite people. And I wonder how you see that evolution returning. How will it be different for us?
I think it's already happened. I mean, I
Okay.
think you're already seeing a lot of the political folks backing away from anti-vaccine stuff. You know, I practice in a
Yep.
part of North Carolina that is not one of the super liberal bastions, and lots of good, hardworking folks who, you know, you open the door and the dad has his t-shirt on for his trucking company. That's his small business. You know, the mom works as a waiter. I've seen her at the restaurant. And the
Yep.
first words to me that they say is, will my child still be able to get vaccines? Right. Like when
Hmm.
I think, I guess I don't totally accept the frame that we're going to have to wait for the administration to change. I think they're already responding to that. I mean, not to be a Pollyanna, not to say that there's not massive attacks. You know, things
Yep.
would
Yep.
certainly be different if, I were a benevolent dictator. But I do think it's already correcting because people are seeing the cost. I mean, the current, the cyclospore outbreaks that we're having, salmonella outbreaks that were happening. I mean, all of these are ways to sort of validate the importance of epidemiology, or, as they taught it to my kids in middle school, disease detectives, right? Like
Hmm.
this is happening. And so, I think the the scary and the policy parts are the things around grant funding, super wonky stuff like what's happening at the universities around indirect cost. Some of those things have been, and will, young researchers, PhDs, MDs decide they want to do research in America, or will they pull up stakes and go somewhere else? I mean, I think Moderna today maybe is finding out whether their mRNA flu vaccine is going to get approved or
It's
not.
today. Yep.
And,
Mhm.
that's, one of the reports that I read, the analysis was saying, the scary thing about this is going to be for the smaller companies that are interested in getting into this. If they start to feel like mRNA is being picked upon, will they be able to attract funding to do some of these really other important research around
Right.
cancer vaccines and other things?
Right.
So I think that's the part that I think a lot of people who are experts in these fields are really worried about. How does it create
Hmm.
the overall scenario? But, as someone I know well said, when he was lobbying Congress for cancer funding, the response was, remember, this isn't really a red versus blue issue. Both not both Republicans, Democrats, and independents all get cancer too, right? Like nobody is on team
Hmm.
pro cancer.
Right. Well, I wonder if some of the hospitals are, but that's because I say those things.
Well,
You know,
I think that's a
I
provocative
don't.
way to
I
make a point, but I think that is, it's the old line about team evil versus team stupid, right? Like a lot of people don't understand what they're doing, and it may give you the ability to make the comment, "Are you're on team cancer, seriously?" But I don't think they are, and I think that's one of the things that we probably can do a better job with, is around science communication, so that we
no
can
question.
make clear to people, like here is the cost of what you very innocently think is happening. It is
Yep.
much, it is, there's a lot of folks, public health folks will say it's a lot easier to take care of that Ebola outbreak when it's 5 people than when it's 500, right?
Sure. I don't believe that the the people who work in hospitals are team evil. I just don't. But I think as an institution, I think any institution starts to protect itself before it protects the people it serves. It's true. It's true of every college in America. It's true of the Boy Scouts. It's true of every religious institution. It's true of the AAP. All right, even. And the thing
But
I wonder is what
but the
happens.
counter, I like to take the counter argument, right? Where
Of
in a
course,
lot of those things, you can give examples of people who really did see the problem and stood up and argued for what was really great.
unequivocally,
And, and,
unequivocally.
and I would argue that pediatricians, I mean, nobody knows this better than you, frequently work against their financial interest because it's the right thing to do, right?
All the time.
Like,
Well, certainly, and as humans, in the space that you and I work, we are surrounded by people who take care of others first. It's the community we live in. What I wonder, though, okay, I'll give you an example of something that someone told me once. Someone we both know who will remain identified. But she had put together for a large and well-known, nationally known children's hospital. She was investigating the no-shows, and especially in the Medicaid community of the patients that the hospital serve. And she came up with this whole plan. The big issue here is transportation, and I've got a model here that will allow us to go do home visits. And in doing so, we think we can reduce ER visits and so forth, and hospital bed use by 25%. And she presented to the board and said, "You're talking about reducing bedtime? We're not doing this project." And that's where what do the hospitals do if suddenly our cancer rates get cut in half? Now, you and I would like to think there's plenty of other work for them to do. There's so many things. There's so much that they can do, but their funding is so deeply dependent on it. It creates a challenge. But
the incentives in healthcare are profoundly misaligned, and I think this is a compelling argument to have doctors in management, because when we're at the table as people who've taken care of patients, I mean, not to get overly dramatic about it, but when you're holding the hand of a parent whose child is dying in front of you from some vaccine preventable disease, you kind of don't give a damn that you're losing money by giving rotavirus vaccine, and kids aren't coming in extremis from their rotavirus infection or pneumococcal disease, the sickle cell disease, right? So I do think that when you leave it to just the straight finance people making decisions on spreadsheets, sometimes the decisions are, well, some would say often, it depends on how cynical you are. But, I just think it's critically important that doctors are involved in management and in the room so we can make that case. Because, the right financial case is sometimes the wrong moral or ethical case, but that's why we need people like doctors at the table.
Well,
and not to say that everybody who's an MBA is evil. I'm not conflating that. I mean,
and not to say that everyone who went to med school isn't. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. No, stipulated. But I think in general, it's really helpful to have physicians. Let's amend our prior commentary to say, I think it's just, or my commentary to say that I think a lot of people would feel strongly that it's really helpful to have physicians at the table who've been involved in the care of patients, kind of pulling the focus back to, patient care first.
Yeah. I mean, I am fairly pro-capitalist, but I don't think the healthcare system works in a capitalist model. I think there are parts of it that do succeed, but at the end of the day, when you're using a financial system that measures wins and losses by the dollars saved or the dollars made today, that isn't how healthcare works. And everything that pediatrics does, which is to prevent illness and sickness and some money spending in the future, no one sees it. It's the one specialty, not the one, but it's the primary specialty that, unlike all the other specialties, should be arguing for more spend.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Because we're underinvesting in children. I mean, I think it was Caitlin Jetelina who posted it, or some healthcare economist, but it was one of these really frustrating articles, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And they were making the argument that if you look at other OECD rich countries, they have many more staffed beds per 100,000 pediatric population. And so they don't run out of beds in winter. Like we accept that, and we kind of accept that, this is what happens every winter in America, like it's a gravitational constant or it's the speed of light or something.
Yep.
It turns out
we're not
that's
doing
a
it
choice.
right unless we're out of beds.
Right. It turns out that's a choice. And so, yes, it would cost more to have staffed beds that we don't use in winter, that we don't use in the summer. But if your primary goal of your system is to make sure everybody's taken care of, it leads you to different places than when you have a certain number of beds that you're allocated by whatever the kind of state bodies are that do that. I'm blocking on the term, but yes, you could always make more money with that one bed on the adult side with post-op patients, but
which is that's happened all over the country, as we know.
And that's really, I think, a strong argument for I think it's just, why we're involved. And I think pediatricians are often involved.
All right. So we opened up with mild political discussion, but here's something that I think, I'm going to say the people deserve to know, Christoph. So a lot of people in North Carolina, obviously everyone in North Carolina knows you, and you're going to explain why in a few minutes. But for a lot of people, they don't know much about you and your practice. In fact, like you and I, we don't discuss your practice very much. Like
Sure.
we do from time to time. I want you to tell us about your practice. What does it look like? How did you get there? What does Sandhill Peds, what does Sandhill Peds feel like?
Yeah. So Sandals Pediatrics, we're, sort of busy semi-rural practice in Moore County, which is where Pinehurst and all the fancy golf is. It's a semi-rural county of 110,000. So we have sort of golf royalty and then just sort of good, hardworking folks. We have 26,000 active patients. We're about half Medicaid insurance, 12 to 15% TRICARE insurance. So a lot of governmental payer. When I started there over 20 years ago, it sounded a little bit more like North Carolina with, Fort Bragg, which is then Fort Liberty, which is Fort Bragg again. When with the base realignment, that's brought a lot more folks. So our office has, a lot more patients from, California, Ohio, Florida, wherever. So it's really been very interesting. And then we've just the sort of senior partners of the practice, as I got interested in practice management, were kind of willing to let me work on that. And, one thing led to another, which led to another, which led to another. And so I've been involved in a lot of different things, patient-centered medical home, because Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina was paying extra for that. And so did a lot of advocacy work around that because I found that program very frustrating in its initial iteration. And then we've done a number of different quality projects. We've done a little bit of vaccine research. And then, our big thing, which is really wildly different, is that we have a fully integrated mental health program with we actually started with a child psychiatrist, and we now have 2 child psychiatrists, a PhD psychologist, and 4 licensed professional counselors. And so that's been very exciting.
We could talk for an hour on that.
For sure.
Let me ask you, I want you to give me your one-word summary. How awesome is it to have integrated behavioral health?
I only get one word?
Okay, you can have a short
Totally.
sentence. Totally.
If I get one word, it's totally awesome.
You and I have, I don't know, roughly a half dozen clients everyone does it slightly differently, by the way, but they have
it's all payer dependent.
Integrated behavioral health, and they are all among our highest performing practices. And I think those two things are related. I mean, yes, they're high performing, so they get to do this thing, but the integrated behavioral health is what also allows them to do all these other things well. And they are not happy. They are satisfied in their work that in a way that other practices are not.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, I think every practice is in its own, it's sort of Tip O'Neill, all politics is local, right? Except all medicine is local. All
pediatrics is totally local. Yeah.
Payer environments are different. I mean, one of the quote secrets of our being able to do this is that we have a large panel of patients insured by Medicaid. And so there in North Carolina, they had a special way that they paid for mental health care. And so we were able to go to those entities for some assistance with startup funding, and that sort of enabled it. And then that once that got rolling, it became obvious how valuable it was.
Yep. Well, one thing I'm going to say is that you embody something that Katrina Skinner says all the time, which is you have not because you ask not. And I know so many people who they want someone to come along and hand them the model. Just give me the recipe book. Tell me how to do it. And you're not afraid to raise your hand and say, I've got an idea. Like, can you tell me how we can build this?
Right. Yeah.
And that's like a superpower.
Right. Well, I think it's, I mean, some of it is, there's definitely some privilege in not being afraid to ask the question. Some of it is probably North Carolina particular, that North Carolina runs as a big, small town, and you may not know the person you need to talk to, but if you show up at meetings, you will eventually very quickly know the person who knows the person. that you need to talk to. And so sort of the strength of weak ties. And then when you sort of get involved in state pediatrics and, people, Marion Earls, Dave
Mhm.
Kalo, you have people like this that you just start being in meetings with and they treat you like an equal, even though their little fingernail knows more about the topic than you do. It just, that's exactly right. You just become unafraid to ask questions and say, well, why not? And then I think once you start going down that road, things very quickly build on themselves, and you realize that a lot of these premises are just wrong. Like we can afford nice things in America, which are the richest country in the history of the world. I mean, it's
Right.
it's an absurdist comment to say that you can't pay really well for mental health when we think nothing of the cost of some of these biologic drugs.
Yep.
That's fine, but let's
Yep.
pay a child psychiatrist a nickel, and boy, that's a heavy
People freak
lift.
out. Yep. I think one thing that you share with a couple of my clients is, I mean, it's not only the lack of fear of asking why not, but it's also an abundance mentality. You know quite well that, for example, this is, I also gave a talk about this, about the opportunities that pediatricians miss because they bring their do no harm mentality to running their business. First,
Right,
do no harm in the exam room. That's important. But when you're running your business, you have the ability to risk and reward differently.
right.
And when the examples I give are like with COVID vaccine and Beyfortus vaccine. Like
Yep.
I have a couple clients who were the first in line, pushed everyone out of the way and said, me first. And everyone's like, but what if, what about? And all of my practices were at the front of the line. Not only did they make money, like they didn't lose money, but
Right.
they did the thing that gave value to their work more than anything. Like, how good did you feel giving those COVID vaccines to adults those first couple of weeks?
Oh, I mean, it was like being wrapped up in joy itself, right? I
Yep.
mean, I
It,
still can't. I mean, and it was also, I mean, I can't even think about it without getting a little emotional about it because it was such a terrifying time. And,
mm-hmm.
COVID had been just, I mean, COVID is being brought up now in sort of this odd political thing about
Yep.
look at all the mistakes we made. And yes, we made mistakes, but another way to describe that, I mean, look at what happened. We had a novel virus and we created more vaccine than we'd ever created before. And we figured out logistically how to deliver it all over the country. I mean, the
Yep.
logistician who ran that, I mean, just having enough dry ice alone, just having enough glass to make vials out of that could go from minus 80 to
Yep.
room temperature. I mean, all those challenges that we solved. I mean, these
Right.
people should be on their stamp, on our stamps. We should have ticker tape parades for them. But yeah,
Totally agree.
I remember just being wrapped up in joy. And then, we gave a lot of vaccines to a lot of our grandparents and,
Yep.
saw Mrs. Jones, who was from a historically marginalized population, checking in the desk. Miss Jones, obviously not a real name. And overheard her saying she's getting the vaccine. And I went up to the nurse practitioner who'd seen her. I said, I saw Miss Jones getting the vaccine. She's a hero. She's a grandma raising her grandchildren because the parents aren't available for lots of reasons. And
Yep.
how did you get her to take the vaccine? And she said, well, I just talked to her about it like we normally do. And when I asked her later what led her to sort of agree to get it, she said, well, no one had talked to me about it like you did, like your practice did. And,
Yep.
you talk about the value in the work. I mean, I didn't really care if we made money on it or not. I mean, to
Yeah.
protect
I
that
know you.
grandma who at the time was super high risk. I mean, I still remember a mother who the chicken processing plants were really lots of people
Oh,
working.
they
They were
got
dying
wiped out. Yep.
at that point. And I had a mom at one of our offices close to one of the plants. And she said she worked in chicken processing. I said, I want you. And she's like, oh, I don't want that vaccine. It turns you into a zombie. I'm like, well, ma'am, I've had the
And
vaccine.
you're looking
Everybody
at
here in
one.
the office had the vaccine. I assure you, none of us are going to eat your brains. And she agreed to get the vaccine after we talked about it a little bit more. And so it was also very professionally validating because it was, there's no more core competency than talking to people about vaccines, I think, for us in pediatrics. And so
Totally.
I mean, like for when we got the vaccine for kids, maybe 12 and up or 6 months and up, I mean, we had a disco ball in one of our offices, I mean, it was a party.
Summoning the spirit of Katie Schaefer.
Well, that's a very nice compliment. I don't think I approach her shadow when it comes to that kind of thing, but yeah, I mean,
It's why you
it's
do what you
exactly right.
do.
Right, right.
It is why you do what you do.
It is very core purpose and values.
Yeah. When you're whatever, Reggie Jackson, and you hit a home run in the World Series and you're rounding the bases and you're like, this is why I did it.
Right.
This is the most important thing that I do. And I could see the people who and I am not being critical of them, because some of these practices every practice is, like you said, it's local. Every practice has a different amount of safety net or conception of what they're capable of. But a practice who said, wait, is there anything more important that we can do than give these COVID vaccines? And the answer is no. You say, like,
and again, it was very state dependent, right? Like, I mean,
yes,
I
also,
knew
yeah,
the
no,
state health
completely.
director, we were able to have calls when vaccine supply was really short and, ask the
Yeah,
question, okay, it's 5 o'clock. They're coming in the door. I have to crack a
yeah,
vial to vaccinate this kid. It's 5
right,
doses. Am I in trouble if I have to waste, whatever it was, the extra
yeah,
4 doses? And,
yeah.
I can't get the UPS guy to get it. He's already gotten it.
Yeah,
I'm
I know people were
walking down
chasing.
the street.
Yeah, Katrina told me she
We all
walked
did
across
that.
the
We
street
all
to
did
the
that.
taco place,
Yeah.
and of course, overwhelmingly, when you approach service people who are like, below the radar, everyone's radar, they're like, please, please,
Right.
please,
They
please,
can't
like
afford to miss
overwhelmingly,
work.
right?
Right. They
And
can't afford to miss work and they're high risk. And so, that's the thing that is sort of crazy. Like, I mean, statistically, it's impossible. It's almost impossible to believe that we didn't vaccinate folks who would have dropped dead had they not had the vaccine. We just don't know who those people are.
we don't know whose lives you saved. You
Right.
unequivocally, just the math says you
Yeah.
saved a practice your size,
Right.
1,000 lives. All right.
Right.
I'm also
Who knows?
chagrined, I guess. I don't know. Disappointed is not quite the right word. It's amazing how quickly it has fallen out of the social memory. March, April, May, June.
I
March
think,
through December 2020.
yes, I think that, yeah, no, I've had to sort of call parents out when they say, "Oh, I sure have the vaccine." I'm like, "Well, hang on. I remember I was there and it was terrible and this was such a blessing. And if you don't want it, no one's going to make you get it. But I mean,
Right.
this was an
Millions of
unbelievable
people
blessing."
died. And
Right.
we've it's amazing to me how we've already forgotten. The New York Times prints a list early on, back when
Right.
they could fit the names in a couple pages. And I'm feeling
But,
like those
but,
people are forgotten a little bit.
but this is something the sociologists are really going to need to dig on
Sure.
because, like, I saw one really interesting article where it was talking about the Great Pandemic of 1918, and the sociologist was sort of wondering why there was no art or music or drama that was referencing the Great Pandemic. And
Oh, good
the
point.
argument this person was making, now I get it, post COVID. Nobody wants to talk about that thing that happened back
Right.
there anymore.
There's no funny comedy about there's no funny COVID comedy.
Yeah,
It's not
no.
funny. And
It's just a very difficult time. But I mean, again, I don't think the story is, yes, there's always things we could have done better. No, things were not perfect. We can all give the list of things that, could have been better.
Yep.
But, when you just start with we made more vaccine than had ever been made before against a novel, illness, and we saved a lot of lives with that. That's an achievement.
I think it was the single greatest achievement of that administration, and they didn't embrace it.
I think, again, this isn't a political podcast, but I mean, I've been troubled by that as well. I mean, this, I used to joke, you just tell me who you like and I'll argue it in your frame. If you're a,
Right.
you're a
Right.
Trump
If you're this
person,
side, or this side.
he made the vaccine and the deal that made the vaccine happen fast enough. If you're a Biden person, he's the one who actually got it out and got it delivered, right? And, helped with the funding thing, right? Like I can argue it in either frame. I just don't want people, I just didn't want people to die of COVID. And then to say
Right.
nothing of all the debilitation that happened. So anyways,
Yep.
lots to think about
Okay.
there, but
All right. So, all right. I got to get back on track.
good luck with that.
So, yeah, as a pediatrician, getting up every day, what do you look forward to? What excites you?
Right now I'm really excited about, just a lot of the stuff that we have, a lot of the projects we have at the office with mental health. We're
Mhm.
working on a pediatric supergroup centered on integrated mental health. And
I was
so,
setting you up for this. This is the answer
yeah.
I'm waiting for. Okay. So,
So,
tell us
so
about your
try,
super group.
so a lot of supergroups sort of come together with just, we'll build market share, and then as we have more market share, we'll be able to negotiate with the payers better. And that's sort of the organizing principle. We had sort of some interesting things happen in North Carolina where initially, I believe it was Blue Cross went on a 100-county listening tour and just felt like they were getting lots of feedback that there would really need to be a lot of help with mental health. And so they came to our practice as an example of a place that was, doing a really good job. And they really liked what they saw. They came 2 trips, with really senior people and said, "This is great, Christoph, but I don't know how you would scale it." And, we kind of hemmed and hawed. I sort of said, well, maybe you could, come up with a way you could pay us like a defense contractor. We'll come up with cost accounting. You just pay us cost plus 15%. And, you pretend I'm a defense contractor in que sera. So that didn't, but then it started to kind of feel weird. Why would Blue Cross subsidize other, private insurance plans? Essentially, that didn't have a good feeling. And so then some of the additional data came out about variation of pay, and we realized there were a lot of practices that are really just doing a fantastic job clinically, but have had difficulty with some of the practice management and negotiation. And that sort of led really almost organically to the idea of a pediatric supergroup centered around integrating mental health. And because we're so unusual, having child psychiatry at the center of it, most folks when they integrate will bring in a psychologist, a therapist, that kind of thing. We kind of went the other way because we had opportunity. A child psychiatrist showed up in town who asked if we'd be interested in hiring her. And we said, yes, we would. Because I had a senior partner who had
You said yes to opportunity. That's
that,
what I like.
yeah, and it was because we knew the level of demand that I had a senior partner who was sort of the amateur child psychiatrist for the county and was kind of helping out with kids the best, he knew how. Dr. Stewart would go to the,
Yep.
psychopharmacology lectures at Harvard and, really brought a lot back. And so we had probably an adverse selection population. But anyways, all this is sort of leading to, this was not like a master plan with a big whiteboard and the red yarn, it was sort of one thing leading to another organically. But as we've had conversations with payers around this, it's very different now than it was 12 years ago when we first got the child psychiatrist, where now we start talking about, I think this is really critical that we could expand access to mental health statewide. Would you be willing to invest in this program? And we're just starting at a different place than we were 12 years ago, where everybody, like the executive you're negotiating with, there's a really good statistical chance their kid is having a hard time, or if not their kid, their kid's friends. And so,
Yep.
and then when you start getting into the math of it all, that all dollars to primary care in America is 3 to 5%. And what is it, 67,000 pediatricians in the AAP? We're
Yep.
tiny compared to the number of adult doctors. So we really literally are budget dust. So as we ask for things, even things that seem like big things, it's really not that much in absolute dollars to them.
Yep. No, it's hard to do the return on the investment. I hate thinking that way, but like
I think we have spent so much time trying to engage in the finance spreadsheet thing. I think it is really much more about the story. All the insurance plans are really getting pounded on their boards about what are you doing to address the mental health crisis. And I mean, I would say fairly so. We are reaping the rewards of the non-system system of mental health care that we have in America, right? And so, we're presenting essentially a ready-made answer. And I really think that there is, there's the business case and the return on investment. Maybe the kid's not handcuffed to the bed in the emergency department because they don't end up in crisis, right? Like that's good for everybody, right? Like
Right.
everybody wins
Well,
when the child doesn't get to
I
that
asked
crisis.
myself, how many therapy sessions does a single ER visit cost?
Sure. And then to say nothing of like, like during COVID, when that person was in the ER with COVID that could have been prevented, can that person with chest pain get in the bed that they need to, manage their heart attack appropriately, or the person with the ectopic pregnancy, right? Trying to avoid those sort of crises. And so I just think it's
Yep.
such an opportunity now. And honestly, what we're asking for in pediatrics is so little that I think a lot of the plans have been very interested in that. And so we're talking to practices that are interested in, being part of that vision of integrating mental health as part of
Yep.
becoming something bigger. But it is a difficult and complicated thing to do. So it's not a quick thing.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, for anyone who misunderstands my pro-capitalism comment earlier, this behavioral health, mental health thing is exactly why our healthcare system isn't capitalist, because there's overwhelming demand for it from the patients.
Right.
And
But
the system isn't designed to react to it.
Yeah, before we had mental health in our practice, I used to be sort of irritated at mental health folks that weren't taking health insurance and just did it by
Yep.
cash. But as soon as I tried to get our team paid for integrated mental health, I've completely flipped. You're a mental health person, you have a practice that's cash pay. I'm sort of like, good on you. I understand it. I have seen bizarro things in mental health payment world, like where they, for some of the plans, their take it or leave it offer was to pay our child psychiatrist the same for a level 1 versus level 5 consult code. So like really intense,
Yep.
lots of work, complicated. They would pay them less than they would pay me for an ear infection, right?
And
Or you're
these
going to
are
come
also,
see me. I'm going to fumble around for 45 minutes with a kid who's maybe having budding psychosis, hearing voices. I don't really know what I'm doing. You're going to pay me, the general pediatrician, more than you're going to pay my board certified one of our board certified child psychiatrists. I mean, that's insane, right?
it's insane.
Like that is and that is what's led to the system that we have of limited access.
I don't know any rich child psych people.
Right. I mean, and they
it's
should
not a
be,
model.
right. So like it's, I don't often quote George F. Will, but when I do, it's his statement when Hillary Clinton tried to reform healthcare, that when it comes to healthcare, the invisible, Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market is all thumbs.
Yeah.
Right. Child psychiatrists, by any reasonable measure, ought to be paid more than orthopedic surgeons or neurosurgeons, because quite honestly, there's more demand for child psychiatrists.
Right. And they just, and also in my experience working among them, it's limited. It's not like it is for peds, but they are not business people at all, like even less so. So them wading into the space where, because a lot of them work in sort of a very, obviously they're overhead. They don't have front desk staff often. They don't have billers often, or it's over there. They don't have nurses and MAs walking around. It's usually like them. And and I've seen some of the billing systems that they put together. They are incapable of following up on a claim, and they get their chains yanked harder than you do. So if someone who takes cash, because they're just like, oh my God, I just want to get $50 an hour, and they're saving lives and changing lives. I'm totally.
Yeah, no, I think I think they're the value, and we've seen that value in our practice, and have, done it, really internally subsidized a lot of it, because we've seen the value for our patients. And, you've heard me say it before, but when people say, what's the secret to integrated mental health? The answer is often be willing to lose money. And so the effort with the supergroup is to sort of change that and sort of make it so that it is not financially stupid, and that we have the hope is to eventually have contracts that recognize their value, so that we can expand the model statewide. Because obviously, I've been saying for a long time to people, well, the secret is being willing to lose money. And so far, that hasn't been a winning argument.
Yeah. Uh,
And I think, I mean,
I think,
and again, I'm not being mean to the
yep,
plans. Like, I think people are understanding that we have to do something, that what we're currently doing isn't working. And, so I feel like we're making progress, but then there's just a lot of sort of other operational stuff that comes with a super group, like everybody being on the same health plan. And that is another thing with scale, because we get big enough that we're able to have a self-funded plan, which is also
yep.
probably an hour-long episode. And then, we're
Yeah,
able to get,
we should come back for that.
we're able to get a bigger, we're able to get a more professional 401k plan with better education opportunities for our teammates. And, all those sorts of things I think are really advantages that come with scale.
I've said for the longest time, the advantage to size is not better insurance contracts, because a lot of the times it doesn't lead to that. What it is good for is having stronger professional associations, having people who can really do websites, or paying someone else to do your insurance negotiation. So I know small practices who do very well with insurance negotiation, but they have to do it themselves. It's a
Right.
huge amount of work.
Right.
And instead, if you're a group of you are like, oh, well, this guy does it, so I can pay attention to the stuff I actually enjoy doing. Getting real HR, getting real,
Right. And, like we have really professional HR. So people are going to get essentially fractional HR. They're going to get a much more
yep,
sophisticated
yep.
IT help desk support, right? Like
That's where it
we're
is. Yep.
talking to a lot of practices that are interested in coming in that have what, some folks refer to as 2 men in a truck IT departments, where, maybe the firewall was okay 5 years ago, but it's not so up to date now.
Yep.
Who's on top of all those sort of emerging security threats.
Yep. I'm with you. Okay. So I did promise you to stay tight to the timing. So I have to ask you a closing question.
I'm happy to talk as long as you want to talk, as you know.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you were like, I got this window. And so
No,
try to be
actually,
good
that
about it.
that other call got canceled, so we
Oh,
can keep
okay.
going if you want.
Oh, we can go for 2 hours.
Yeah,
Episode 3.
sorry, I should have told you that at the outset before we clicked the go button.
Okay, that's it just as well. Actually, Aaron Hour said, "Hey, should I join the call to make sure that you guys stay on task?" I was like, "You leave me alone." Here's my question to you: if you could go back 30 years and give yourself career advice, what would it be?
Like, this is to medical school, or like what time point do you mean?
No,
Like, I'm already
wherever
in practice, or give me a little bit.
it is open to your
Because I did
interpretation.
lots of
Whatever.
different things, right? Like, I thought I was going to go to pediatric hem-onc, right? So it really, like, that's why
Yeah,
I'm trying to press it.
it's wherever you want to draw that line. Just to
Okay.
your younger
Okay.
self.
Yeah. I mean, younger self,
Pediatric HEMOC, oh my word. That's
yeah.
a
No.
tough row to hoe.
Well, I mean, the science is fascinating and amazing.
Science fascinating.
You look at, when my dad was in training in medicine, he said, put me on call extra nights, do whatever you want, but don't make me take care of the kids with cancer. Because
I'm in your dad's
he
same.
was an oncologist in training, many years
Yeah.
ago, I mean, they really did terribly. And, now, I mean, leukemia, the shift
Stuff
in a
is better. Stuff
generation
is
of doctors for how children with leukemia do is really massive. And the science is inspiring. And I was in training at St. Jude, and, how can you not be inspired?
right.
But, changed my mind. So anyways, what I would say is that as I was early in career, it would have been find SOAPM faster.
Or start it. If it well, you were right.
I'm
You
not
were
old.
there
SOAPM
kind of
already
at the
existed.
beginning.
Yeah, no,
SOAPM already
SOAPM already
existed.
exists as I came out, but just like, I mean, my entree, my sort of Spider-Man origin story was going to the AAP coding meeting in Williamsburg, and coming back and saying, "Why don't we bill for a urine cath?" And my billing people who knew what they were doing saying, "Well, that's because they never pay it." I said, "Well, did you use a modifier 25?" They said, "What's a modifier?" I mean, these are good folks. I mean, they weren't evil people. They just didn't know. And then, there's this code we can use for a nursemaid's elbow reduction. You may want to use a 99213.
I remember I was at the Arizona chapter meeting probably 30 years ago. and I can't remember who it was. I don't remember his name, but there was like back then, as you know, a lot of these chapters had like, the godfather of the chapters, like the heavyweight guy was
Right.
there. And I was in the back of the room doing something. I can't remember what. And someone was giving a coding talk. Basically, what it boiled down to was he tried to give me a gotcha question. And he said, what is the number one code that pediatricians don't bill for that costs them the most money? And I was like, nursemaid's elbow. And he was like, oh, all right, you're on the team. I knew it. I knew what the question was. Thank God. But it was, and it is kind of funny. I still look when I do productivity analyses. I still look and I ask people, it's interesting. You didn't reset any elbows in 2025. Is that true? Sometimes people say, yeah, that's true. We didn't. That just like they go somewhere else. And now it's weird, but it's true. And still right there. And it's a $300 procedure, not an $80 procedure that people often put off. Like,
Yeah. So to the comment of, orthopedic surgery, earlier versus child psychiatry, right? I mean, you look at those things and it's hard to feel like that's fair, when the value of mental health, I think everyone is seeing is just so high right now.
And let's be clear, not only can I perform that procedure, all right, it makes me think of the Little Rascals. Pop, and you're a hero. It's $300. All right.
Yeah,
and
no, it is, it is such a satisfying thing to have that, child who's
right.
Apprehensive and maybe a little tearful all of a sudden, be delighted that, you handed them the sticker that they grabbed with a hand that didn't used to work. Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's very satisfying.
Yep.
Not, was it a pneumonia? Was it not a pneumonia? Was it an ear infection? Not, it's just, oh, they're better, right? It's very satisfying.
I once asked a client, I said, what is your favorite thing to do? What is your absolute favorite thing to do? And he said, like draining an abscess, or like he said something like that, because it's just like you get it ready to do, and it all happens at once, and the relief is instant, and it's very satisfying. And now their entire YouTube channel is dedicated to that. Back then, that was like I asked him so long ago, that was the case.
I had a senior resident that was her thing. She said because it's definitive, and you made them better, and
right.
I mean, there's
nothing wrong with that.
It was funny.
And the child psych people have to go to bed every night not knowing, but doing their best.
Well, I don't think our child psychiatrists would describe it that way. I know.
No, but it's not. The work isn't as definitive as it is as, a dislocated joint.
Yeah, but it is. It's been so interesting, right? Like we had a patient once who, was having some real problems and, like hauled off and, punched a hole in the wall or something like that. And, some of the nurses were like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to discharge this patient. And, went and talked to one of the child psychiatrists about it. She said, didn't really feel threatened. And this went on, and this behavior happened for this reason. And, this is the kind of patient that we can really help. And it's going to be very rewarding what we do. And it was one of those kind of frame shift things. And she continued to see the patient, made them better, really fixed a lot of the aggressive behavior that he was having trouble with. And did very well and, graduated from school and made a big difference in his life. And it was one of my kind of real first frame shift moments with them, with the mental health team, where I was like, there's so much that I do not know about this. And that had I been kind of left to my own devices, I probably wouldn't have done the best thing for that patient. And so those kind of experiences really makes you kind of feel like this is a thing we really got to fight for and expand. Every kid in America should have access to the mental health care that they need.
I think that's
and not just America, but that's the problem.
No,
right? I would wish for the whole world, just to be clear.
Of course, no need for caveats. Like that is you could run on that platform.
That's right.
Every child.
There are people who have. I mean, I think Kim Schreier. I think that was one of adolescent mental health was part of her platform, the first pediatrician elected to Congress. I think I remember hearing that.
I'm amazed by the people who do it. And that is by people. I'm amazed by the pediatricians who run for political positions, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you're adding this to your plate. But
Well, I think in the current timeline where, the policymakers are sort of limiting, people's ability to practice, I think we're going to see more and more pediatricians stepping up.
I hope so, because
I mean, right south of me, right? Dr. Annie Andrews in South Carolina, right? I mean, I don't know who.
I think I would vote for someone just knowing they're a pediatrician, because that's foolish to say, don't get me wrong, but as soon as I hear they're a pediatrician, regardless of their politics, because I have plenty of clients whose politics I don't agree with, I still know something about what their values are.
Right.
And I also believe that overwhelmingly, pediatricians are extremely good communicators. And again, regardless of your politics, regardless of the positions you take or how you feel about things, I'm not someone who believes that everything's gotten worse. I'm not someone who believes that things are worse. Overwhelmingly, things are better in 2026 than they were in 2006 and certainly 1966 and
1940.
1906.
Right.
Yeah. Much, much, much better. But I have a hard time not feeling like we've lost the ability to communicate well, and or we haven't lost it. We just don't use the ability to communicate well.
It's different pieces, right? I mean, for me, as we get into communications, and this is where, I would tag Todd will in. But, I think it's that not operating off a common set of facts. When people read the newspaper, we got all the news the same way. Now we click online and, we're getting A/B tested on the headlines and, what shows up at the top of the page isn't the same for everybody. I mean, all that stuff, I think is probably not good for the civic politic.
Nope.
And how we,
absolutely not.
You need to operate off a common set of facts to, I think, have informed debate and discussion. But boy, speaking of another thing we could do a podcast on for an hour. That's a little afield of our normal, things here. But I think what I was trying to say, I don't know what the list of what pediatricians are running in the current cycle, but I think we're going to see more and more people step up because they're seeing
what happens if they don't.
Implications for the policymakers. And, I think a lot of them are kind of looking at, there's also probably some folks are going, well, if that person can do it, I think I can. So.
Yeah. And what struck me the other day is I was reading something. I'm pausing only because I want to remain apolitical. I was reading something from a politician from the 80s, something he expressed. This was in a national address. All right. And I read it, and the quality of the messaging, just the quality of the messaging. This is not someone I'm a fan of. This is someone whose politics I didn't agree with, but I looked at the quality of the messaging and I'm like, I have a hard time arguing with the intent of what this message is trying to convey. Okay. And I was like, right now, there's so many times when I read a message from a politician, even some I agree with, where I'm like, the quality of that message, I don't agree with. Burlington, Vermont has got massive, it's very, very political. Okay. We draw a lot of national attention for it. We have done some things that there was a big article in the Atlantic a couple days ago about us. And last, or 2 nights ago was our city council meeting where it's all public comment and, it's like the circus. And there's a big debate right now about Burlington, Vermont has, well, some people don't believe this part to be true, but Burlington has a homelessness and drug use problem because we've taken harm reduction position on how to treat the homeless, and I'm largely in favor of that. But you can't go downtown to some parts of downtown now, all right, safely. That's an executive summary. And so the one of the political parties in Burlington put forth a new proposal to really address this problem. And I don't ascribe myself to a particular political party, but it's the one I align with probably most often, at least in Vermont. And I don't like some parts of their proposal at all. They're talking about using flock cameras, so I'm like, nope, I'm out, right? But of course, everyone who opposes this policy shows up to argue against it, and I'm just listening to the way that they're arguing against it. And I would say 9 out of 10 of them, the arguments were so poor. And then one guy came in, and I put him out. My wife goes, "Oh yeah, that's a grad student up at UVM." I was like, he laid it out. Now this is, by the way, this is an ad for doing debate club. Okay, I'm just giving you the ad. I'm queuing you up, but I like that guy gave an unemotional argument that can still appeal to your emotions,
Right.
or still appeal to your feelings, and we've lost a lot of that. I'd like to get back to that. If I'm going to get fooled by a politician, I'd like to at least not know it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's all really complicated. But at the same time, I mean, a lot of it is just sort of communications, and how do we prioritize things? How do we allocate resources? Yep. And then do we have to accept the premise that resources are limited, right? Like I think I really like what you said earlier, that pediatrics is a specialty where we need to start the frame with, and you need to put more money into this, right? Like it ought not to be the frame of adult medicine where we're overspending here. Let's cut, see how much money we can save. We already don't put enough money into pediatric care.
We need to spend money in pediatrics to save money for adults. It is so obvious. It's so obvious. And all of the stuff, all of it, obesity, asthma, mental health. I mean, just go down the list. But pediatricians are the only specialty who actively fight cancer. You give vaccines against cancer,
right.
And everyone else depends on cancer for their business. And I'm like, no, let's do everything we can.
Right. I mean, Frederick Douglass, right? Easier to build strong children than repair broken men, right? Kind of same idea.
Oh, yeah. If anyone who pulls Frederick Douglass into the podcast, you get a gold star. That was very well done. But yes, that quote is that is exactly right, and I don't know why everyone doesn't see it.
Yeah, no, I think that. I mean, I do think and maybe that's the argument politically, that in a fractured time, maybe we can all get together and try to do some things that are good for children.
Well, let's hope. All right. So at the end of the day, though, did you tell me what your advice was to your younger self?
Find soap and faster.
I think you snuck around it.
Find soap.
Oh, yes.
Find soap and faster was my answer.
Yes, that is.
If I'd found SOAPM in residency, like as I changed my mind and decided not to do hem-onc and was going to go do general peds, I would have hit the ground running at my practice on practice management a little bit sooner. Where one of my origin stories is that I discovered we were charging less than we were contracted to receive from one of the large private insurance plans in the state. And, my senior partners,
that is my daily work.
I know. But, my senior partners, I mean, I always joke they've forgotten more pediatrics than I'll ever be smart enough to learn. Right. And they were doing a fantastic job clinically, but just, didn't really have kind of time or, the ability to really figure
that is not why they got out of bed.
Right. Didn't think about reading EOBs. They were trying to, snatch babies out of the jaws of, Hib, Haemophilus influenza type B, meningitis, epiglottitis. They were real doctors.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I mean, those people still exist, but though my job is to make sure that they get paid because I need them to stay around.
Right.
I need them to never have a moment of regret for their decision to become pediatricians.
Right. Life's better in the land of lollipops.
All right. You get to give out stickers. You get to play with kids. It's like,
that's right.
It's the best job. Yeah.
And defeat disease.
It's like elementary school teachers, first responders, pediatricians, they corner the market on intrinsic rewards for their careers.
Right.
Pretty
awesome.
Yep. And in this century, that's going to be, especially as more and more of our AI robot overlords take over our lives, that intrinsic value, it's going to be important.
Oh,
So,
come on. You're just chumming the waters to make this call keep going. I'm deeply skeptical on the AI stuff. I think big tech distinguishes itself in its ability to oversell and underdeliver.
I mean, how am I going to argue with that? But I will tell you what I am able to do sitting in this chair to develop tools and do analysis for the business, the work that I do as a pediatric consultant. I can do more in 10 minutes using AI than I could do in 2 weeks, 2 years ago. I am building tools. Like every day I come in and I'm like, I want to do this. And I can build a tool that works, is slick, and it's fast that would normally have cost me $50,000 to build. I would have had to pay someone and spent hundreds of hours working on it. I remember, oh my gosh, 25 years ago, Suzanne Madden and I did a project for one of the pharmas. They wanted to build this standalone tool so everyone could analyze their vaccine business, and it was a 6-month project. It cost 6 figures. We paid developers. We did all this stuff. I could do it all in 2 weekends by myself now. And that changes things a lot.
It does, but we've had other changes. Like we went from horses and buggies to cars, right? I mean, just like, sure, it's going to be changed, but just it just feels like there's a lot of overselling right now.
Oh, people are making big mistakes with it. People are like, I just the last 2 days, I've taken this internal tool that Alex Mayer wrote by hand a couple, like 2-3 years ago. And it's this program that it does an analysis of our clients, and it takes about an hour to run. And it's got some stuff in it that's super cool. I've probably sent you yours before.
Oh, and yeah, no, we definitely did. We definitely did the magic spreadsheet with you guys.
Yep. And so I was like, hey, I just wanted to play with it. So I dropped in AI, told it to do a bunch of things. And now it takes 5 minutes to run instead of 50 minutes. And I added a couple features. Now, however, this is the part that not everyone, that so many people skip. Now I have to go back through and look at the original and look at this. And there are differences. There are places where it's making mistakes. And as Alex and I have talked about it, the mistakes that you have to watch are not the big mistakes. Oh my God, I doubled someone's AR estimate, because you spot it right away. The mistake you make is when you're trying to benchmark people, and it turns out that the real sick to well visit ratio is 1 to 3, but you have this calculation because you didn't build it yourself that says 1 to 6, and you base all of your logic and all of your consulting on a false number that's only a little bit different. And I'm not sharing my work with anyone except for Alex, because he's going to tell me where I screwed up. But that's the part. It still requires QA, and it just makes you feel like it doesn't.
Right.
So, all right, you and I need to come back. We'll come back. We will talk about AI. We will talk about the latest with your supergroup. Okay. We will talk about what it's like to get a crown and a cape.
And it's not my supergroup, right? I've got lots of partners and people working on it, and people who are smart about things that I'm not.
Of course not. But you're the only one I talk to in your supergroup about it.
That's fair.
So it's yours as far as I'm concerned. And we're gonna have to catch up. So as always, I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening. More information can be found in our show notes. Production and editing by Chip Hart, Ali Squires, and Chris Forleo. Music by Challenger C. I'm Mark Herney.